Okay, today I'm going to talk to you about how I teach prepositional phrases. Prepositional phrases throw kids off because there's something they use all the time, but they don't know they use all the time. Something we pick up just in spoken language that no one really stops to think what they are or what they do. On the STAR test, it's going to be a little bit about how to punctuate them, but also how to use them to combine sentences. That's how they're most often tested on STAR. But of course, we know that STAR doesn't drive the whole boat. So we do need to know a little bit how to just create them, how to punctuate them, things like that. So let's get started. The first thing you need to know is the prepositions. People think this is kind of ridiculous, but if you teach them in song, and you're going to feel sort of silly singing it, but if you teach them in song and you make them practice them in song, they never forget them. At our elementary schools that feed into our junior high, a lot of times the kids come already knowing them, so thank you, 6th grade teachers who are still teaching writing and grammar. But they sing it to the tune of Jingle Bells, and I am going to sing for you, even though I don't have a great voice. But it goes about above, across after against, along among around, at before behind, below beneath beside, besides between beyond, but by concerning down during, except for from inside. Oh, into like near of off, on out over past, since through throughout till to toward under underneath. Oh, until up on with, within and without. Now I know my prepositions, for that there is no doubt. It sounds kind of silly, but the kids will remember them. Give them this, have them cut it out, have them put it in their notebook. Because if they don't know the prepositions, it makes everything else really hard. But if they know the prepositions and they know them well, it's going to make spotting the prepositional phrases a lot easier. And if you can spot the prepositional phrase, you're going to save yourself a lot of heartache in a lot of ways. Typically, if I were to have my druthers as small children, I would teach them to spot the prepositional phrases because it takes all of the guesswork out of what's the subject and what's the verb. So make them memorize those. How to spot them. When I first started at Nichols Junior High, we had a teacher who swore by Stevenson's grammar. And I really liked Stevenson's grammar, and I was a kid who hated diagramming sentences. And if you're a person who loves diagramming sentences, I'm not trying to hate on you, but you know that those sentences can get really, really complicated. And as a kid, I used to freak out, which line does this come off of and where does it go? And it was the placement of it that gave me really a lot of anxiety. So Stevenson's grammar basically does the same thing. It points out what all the things in the sentence do, but it makes it a little easier. And the very first thing you learn in Stevenson's grammar is how to spot the prepositional phrases. So they have a couple of rules. Number one, you star the to. Read the sentence, star the to. And you star it because sometimes to is a preposition, but sometimes it's followed by a verb, and that's the infinitive verb phrase, and that's not the main verb, but it also is not a preposition. So it's going to screw kids up if you don't star the to, because they think it's always a preposition, but sometimes it's part of the infinitive verb phrase. The second step, you're going to P the preposition. And as a junior high teacher, the kids always want to laugh at P the preposition, ha ha ha. But if it makes them laugh, it makes them think, it makes them remember. So P the preposition. Then you're going to end the noun that follows the preposition. So here's where it gets tricky. If you don't know the preposition, it's going to be real hard to do this. So practice with them on the prepositional Jingle Bells. We play preposition bingo. It's great for a day where you don't want to stress them out and do work, like say the day after a test, where they need a little bit of downtime. We play preposition bingo. They label their bingo cards with blank bingo cards with any of the prepositions, and then I just cut up the prepositions and draw them out of a jar. And if a kid wins, they can either get a prize or they can call the next game of bingo. And it's familiarizing the kids with the prepositions. If they want to have more than one bingo card, they can. And I also have little tricks about how to use the same card over and over. Like each round, you just use a little different symbol in the bingo card. That way they don't have to create a new card every time, and you don't have to create the card. If you're interested in that, let me know. I can make sure to put the bingo card in the Google Drive, or if you somehow have landed on my YouTube channel and you're not a Nichols teacher, I can send it to you if you'll email me or leave me a comment. So anyway, back to it. That was a big aside about preposition bingo, but it's a lot of fun. So they start the to, the P, the preposition. Then they're going to put an in on top of the noun that follows the preposition. And the reason you do this is because a prepositional phrase is literally the preposition to the object of the preposition. And the object of the preposition is always a noun or pronoun that follows the preposition. That's how you know where the prepositional phrase starts and ends. Then you're going to squiggle the prepositional phrase. Sometimes I even tell the kids, cross it out. Stevenson's grammar says to squiggle it, but if that's too confusing for your kids, cross it out. Because you can take it out of the sentence and you still have a sentence left over. So, for example, the dog went down the street to the park. You're going to star the to. Oh, sorry, hit the wrong button. You're going to star the to. You're going to end the noun. You're going to P all the other prepositions. You're going to end the noun. You're going to squiggle the phrase from P to N, from P to N, because in this case, if to is followed by a noun, it's a preposition. If it's followed by a verb, it's not a preposition. But in that case, get rid of it too, because it's not the main verb either. Just get rid of it. And then you've got the dog went. The subject and the verb become very clear very quickly because dog is the only noun left and went is the only verb left. This is going to come in really handy when you're working on subject-verb agreement in a few days, because kids get confused when the subject and the verb are split by a prepositional phrase. And so we'll revisit this skill when that time comes. How to punctuate prepositional phrases. The good news is most of the time prepositional phrases don't require any extra punctuation. The only time they might is if the prepositional phrase happens at the beginning of the sentence. For example, during the darkest and coldest nights of winter, comma, I feel lonelier than ever before. And if you're thinking about the 6-sentence patterns that we have posted in our classroom, Jeff Anderson's 6-sentence patterns, what pattern that looks like. During the darkest, coldest nights of winter, comma, I feel lonelier than ever before. If you take out everything in red, you're left with a sentence. It looks like pattern 4 again. Sentence, comma, opener, comma, sentence, where the opener is extra information. If you look at the beginning of the sentence and notice the preposition, it follows the same rule as the Lewis word. A prepositional phrase to begin equals a comma within. When you take off the prepositional phrase, you should have a sentence left over. And sometimes there might be 2 phrases to begin the sentence. The comma goes after the second one. So, for example, in the heat of the moment. I should have made that red, but I didn't. In the heat is one prepositional phrase. Of the moment is another prepositional phrase. But if I take all of that out, it's never a good idea to make a big decision. Is a sentence. It is the subject. Is the verb. So that's why the subject is never within the prepositional phrase, because I can literally take it out of the whole sentence and still have a sentence left over. So when you're talking with kids about this, practice that Stevenson's grammar, practice finding the prepositional phrases a lot, because once they get good at that, everything sort of pans out. In truth, prepositional phrase to begin, technically, it only gets a comma if it's 5 words or more. But for clarity's sake, I just teach my kids to put a comma after it. Unless they go to journalism school and unless they start writing for the newspaper or a magazine, most editors are going to leave it in there. So don't freak out. Don't throw another sometimes but not rule at them. English is already full of too many sometimes but not rules. If they really want to get into technicalities, they will. The good thing about it is if the STAR test tests the punctuation of it, they're always going to make sure that it has 5 or more words at the beginning, because that is one of those loophole rules. So the STAR test creators know the rules, and so they're going to do that. I just teach my kids if it's at the beginning and it's extra, it's an opener, comma, sentence. And we can take that opener off. So here's how to use them to create or combine sentences.